What is this name? This name is the name of the container. Remember, this is the name of the pod, whereas this is the name of the container. Earlier, when we did kubectl run, we gave only name of the pod. We could not give name of the container. Here we are giving the name of the container also. Okay. How we are going to use this name, we will see later. For now, containers also can be given a name, right? And the container is running in the port number 8080. All this we know. Again, it is a pod. It is having the name called as Cubia manual. It is running with an image called looks of Cubia, which is nothing but app.js. And it has got a name. The container has got a name called as Cubia. This entire container is running in the port number 8080. Right now, what is this? This is called as labels, which we have not seen yet. Now, what are labels? Before going to what are labels, now let's take a scenario. Okay. Now there is a deployment engineer. Now he wants to know all the pods that are ready for prod tomorrow. He just wants to know which pods are ready for production tomorrow. Now you might be having hundreds of pods running. Okay. In the tray, you might be having hundreds of pods. Now, how do you know that this pod is still under testing? This pod is there under pre-production. This is the only pod which is ready for prod, and this is under development. So every pod is in different stage. Take this for example, right now, kubectl. I don't have, I have 3 pods running, but I do not know whether this pod is ready for production or it is still under development or still in testing phase. No, I do not know. There is no description of this pod as to what it does. Correct? No? And also, I do not know what this pod is doing. Whether this pod is meant for, let's say, billing. Right? No? And the pod which is there in pre-production, that is for payment. The pod which is ready for production, maybe that is the driver management. That means what? A pod has a description. When you're just leaving this as a creation of a pod only, you are missing that. You cannot describe anything about this pod. Even if you try to give kubectl describe, right? Pod. If I try to describe the Cubia manual, it will give a technical description of all about this pod. But I do not still know whether this pod is billing pod or payment pod or whatever, right? No? So that's when we are going to apply something called as labels. Now just see here. There are different pods. One is a shopping cart pod. One is an order service pod. These are different applications, just like your Uber has got billing, payment, driver, right now. So there are different pods. So all these pods are there. Whenever you give kubectl get pods, all these pods will appear. But this looks a little bit streamlined, no? Or organized. You can see here that all these pods are labeled accordingly. This is a UI pod. This is an account service pod. So you are giving a label. A label is nothing but key value. This label says that this particular pod app equal to UI. So the name of the application equal to account service. The name of the application equal to product catalog. In the same way, you are giving another label as to this pod is in which state. The pod is in stable state. The pod is in beta state. The pod is in testing state. The pod is in development state, whatever. So you can use the labels in order to describe the pod better. Now, since we have already got this in our program, you see here, Cubia manual. Labels are already there. That means your pod has already got the label called as ribbon. How do you extract that? Kubectl get pod show labels. You're saying, I know that I have created a pod with some labels. Until now, I did not see what is the label. Can you show all the label? That means it will list all the pods It will also show what are all the different labels that are existing in the pods. So whenever you want to extract the labels of the existing pod, you will just say dash dash show labels. So all this plus labels. So your QBA manual has app equal to ribbon. So this is a kind of billing pod, payment pod, something like that, right? Now, kubectl label pod. This is the best part. Label pod QBA manual. Let's say environment equal to pod. You see what I'm doing? QBA manual has got already one label. This says what kind of application it is. But I also want to convey, because somebody is waiting. They want to know what is ready for production. So here that information is missing. So I'm saying that this particular pod, QBA manual, is running with an application called as ribbon, and this is also ready for production. Now you see kubectl get pod show labels. So it says two values. Now I can also say kubectl label pod QBA manual, okay, developer equal to color. Developer equal to color. I want to add one more label. I want to be as descriptive as possible so that people can identify more information about this pod. So I'm just adding this information. kubectl get pod show. So even though there are no restrictions for a pod to have multiple labels, it's better that you restrict it with 5 to 7 labels. And this you have to decide at the design time itself. A pod should have the name of the application. A pod should denote as to which phase it is, whether it is in production phase, pre-production phase, development phase, something like that. You design and you say, this is what I will use. Correct? No? So with this, you should be able to easily label. And see here, while in the lifetime of the pod, the application will not change. If it's going to be a billing pod, it's going to be a billing pod. But this will change. No? Sometimes it will be in development, and after some time it will become to testing, and then it will go to production or pre-production, something like that. No? So that means labels can also be changed. kubectl, same thing, label pod, QBA manual. You are saying label pod, which pod? QBA manual. Now, this is not ready for production. I want to downgrade this. I want to make it to testing, for example. Something gone wrong. So I don't want to keep it in production. So I can say environment equal to testing. What am I doing? I am keeping the key. I am changing the value. Key is the same, but I'm saying it's not in product anymore. It's come to testing. But since I am changing an existing key, I have to say overwrite. Previously, I have not given overwrite. Why? Because those were new keys. I'm introducing a new key. From app ribbon, I've introduced environment equal to prod. After that, I have introduced developer equal to Kalyan. Whenever you introduce a new key, you don't have to overwrite. But when a key's value is already existing with a key, and you are just changing the value from prod, I'm making it to testing. So since the key is existing, for those cases, you have to just add a extension called or option called as overwrite. kubectl get pod dash dash show labels. I have used an overwrite. So until now it was prod. Now it has changed to testing. Right now. So this way you will be able to change also. As of now, the labels are useful for identifying what kind of pod it is and in what phase of the SDLC cycle it is. So it is a development, I mean, it is a billing pod or it is a payment pod, and right now it is in testing phase. This you can know by just seeing this right now. kubectl get pod minus L minus equal to let's say. So this is how you have to query. In case if the deployment engineer, right, he wants to know what are ready for production, he will just say kubectl get all the pods, okay, get the PO or whatever, get pods which have the label environment equal to prod. So this is how he will query. So out of 100 pods, he will get filter only those pods which have this label. We can see here. No? So only one pod is coming. As such, kubectl get pods or having 3 pods. Right? No? Out of that, only one pod is having testing. So this is how you filter and then you will be able to use. Namespace zones where exactly your pods have to be placed. You can assume like this, no? You have a playground. You have society playground, no? You have community county playground or something like that, where people used to play. Now that playground is for everyone. Now some people will play soccer. Some people will be going for jogging. Some people will be using it for badminton. Some elders will be just using it for chatting. The same ground, right? No, you are using the same ground, right? No, for different purposes. Probably if somebody is playing cricket, then they might need a wide space, that too in the center, because the ball can go anywhere. Maybe if somebody is going for a jogging, they only need the space on the outskirts of that entire thing. No? So they might just need the outskirts of it, something like that. And if it is going to be a badminton, this place is enough. That means what? Depending on your need, you are going to take the space all within this outskirt. Let's call this, the brown color or yellow. So you are dividing the entire space of what is there in the outer, the purple color. You are dividing your space within this purple color depending on your need. In the same way, what Kubernetes does is Kubernetes says that all these are user pods. Right? No? These are called as user pods. I'm going to give a place for the user pods by default where you can create your user pods. The moment I give -a, you see that namespace comes in. All your user pods are created in a namespace called as default. So by default, when you install Kubernetes says that all the pods that you are creating can be created only in this namespace. But it doesn't mean that there are no other namespaces. You already have other zones existing. For example, you have another namespace called as kube system. This is called as a system namespace. You remember sometime back I used user pods. Master node is user pods. Okay. I used the word user pods. That's because there are system pods existing. They have been created. Now you see all your components, Kubernetes components, what all the components you have? Scheduler, API server, and then you have controllers, all are nothing but pods. So now when you give kubectl get ns, okay, this ns means namespace. Can you show me all the namespaces? Can you list me all the namespaces? If you see default is a namespace, then kube system, already system has created 2 more namespaces. Maybe they are not using it, but they have already created some system namespaces. All these are created by the system during the installation of our Kubernetes. Now, can I create my own namespace? Yes. kubectl create ns. I'm saying that I have default namespace, but I also want to have my own namespace called as Kali. See, namespace Kali created. kubectl get ns. It's going to say Kali is a namespace. Now, this namespace will share all the resources from whatever is there available here. If you want to be very specific that I need this much of memory, this much of the storage, something like that, you can still define. But when you don't define anything, it will share the resources from whatever is available locally from your instance, master node. Right now. So now I have created one more namespace called as Kali. So already all my pods were existing here. For example, I had, let's expand this. Right now. So I had one namespace called as default. right? So this you can overall resource of instance, host instance. Okay, whatever. So you can say it comes with one CPU, 30 GB or 100 MB memory, something like that. This is the overall configuration of your this thing. Now we have made a default namespace. During the installation of Kubernetes, it has made the default namespace. This is where our Kubia manual, right? Well, Kubia manual 1, all are existing, right? Now I have made one more Kali namespace. I made one, and already there is a cube system existing. All our system pods are running in cube system. Now I have made one more called as Kali. Now tell me, currently, when I give kubectl get pod, okay, ctl get pod, do you think all the pods from default namespace will be showcased, or Kali namespace will be only default? If I have to go kubectl get pod minus n Kali, nothing. Just now I have created. Just by creating a namespace doesn't mean that you have gone into that namespace. No, right now you have not gone into that namespace. You are still there in the default namespace. Maybe later you might go into that namespace. Now, how will you go into the namespace? How will you set that I need to have, I need to go into, by the way, why should you get this one? And can anyone say, why would you need a namespace? Why would you want to go into another namespace? You see here, if at all I'm trying to delete all these pods, accidentally also I should not be deleting the system pods, because then everything will go for a toss. So they say whatever you do within the namespace, I will not be hampered because I am in a different zone. Whatever you do, I will not have. By the way, how do you delete all the pods? kubectl delete all. Okay, this is the, it will delete all the resources and all the pods. I mean, all the resources from, all the items from all the resources. Do you see that? Without telling, it is implicit that you delete all only from default namespace, nothing else from other namespaces. So right now, even if you use all, it is going to delete only your namespace related items and nothing else. Right? Now, kubectl get pod minus a, you can see that it is terminating. So in due time it will be terminated, but nothing happens to the other namespaces. So in case if you are afraid of other application developers deleting your names in your pods, then you could have your own namespace and you can start creating it, right? Even though in an application it's not preferred, because then the problem will come as to who to have more resources, who to have less resources. Maybe if there is a pressing demand, you can always use creating your own names, but normally namespaces are not within applications. How they will create is, like here, system is one, no? So DBAs will have their own namespace, right? No? In the same way, admins will have their own namespace, that is infra admins. Okay, and even your network engineers, they need to have their own. So your application will be running in default namespace, of course, but other people who are not concerned with your applications may have their own namespace, so that their applications don't clash with your application. So this way namespace will be very useful, right? Now I am still in default namespace. I would like to move to Kali namespace. How would I move to the Kali namespace? You see here, kubectl get pod tells me I'm in default namespace. Now that's when I will use kubectl config sit context current namespace is equal to Kali. Okay, so this is the command that I will use. But before issuing this command, let me show you something. cd $home cd.cube cat config. Let's go to the config. You see, so there is something called as context. Okay. The context means that what is the place in which we are talking about. We are talking about a context where the cluster is called, the common name for the cluster is Kubernetes as of now. When you have multi-cluster environment, you can even name within that which cluster. Normally we are having single cluster. What do you mean by single cluster? What we have created right now is a single cluster. We have one master node and two worker nodes which belong to a cluster. But in real time, you will not have one cluster. Like this, you will have 10, 15, 100 clusters also. So when you are having multi-cluster environment, the context says this applies to which cluster? Cluster number 1, 2, 10 or all. Okay. Now, then you say who is the user and all the things. Right? You can see here that there is no word called default comes here. Neither there is any word called the namespace. There is no namespace or default. That's because when the config file is created for the first time during the kubeadm init, when the master node was formed, it is assumed that we are going to have only default namespace. So there is no namespace mentioned here. But see this, kubectl get nodes minus v equal to 8. Get pods, sorry. Get pods. Get pods minus v equal to 8. When you are giving the pods, do you see that it goes for the namespace default? So when you give this get pod, it takes the config file. The config file by default, if nobody touches the config file, as of now, we have not touched the config file at all. We have never tampered the config file. When nobody has touched the config file, by default, always it will point to the default namespace. Now, what we are telling the Kubernetes is, I don't want you to point to default namespace. I want you to point to Kali namespace. So that's why we are giving this command. This command says that can you change the config file, go to the context. Wherever there is any other namespace coming, take it out and put the current namespace as Kali. So that is the root of everything. Config is the root of everything. So there you go and change the namespace from default to Kali. By the way, kubectl run nginx. I'm just creating because I don't have any. I'm just creating one image equal to nginx. kubectl describe pod nginx Kalyan. Even though I did not have config file pointing to default, but when I described a pod, the pod is automatically given namespace equal to default, which means everyone within the Kubernetes knows that even though config did not mention it anywhere in the config file, it's always pointing to default. Now, this is what we are going to change. Now we will say enough with default, make it as Kali. Right? No? Now you go and see the config file. Vi config. You see that? Namespace Kali. So now at the root of the config itself, this particular command has put a new namespace called as Kali. Now let me just give kubectl get pod. No resources found in the Kali namespace. How? kubectl get pod minus v equal to 8. Now it has started picking it up from the Kali namespace, which means when you are making any query on kubectl, kubectl refers to the config file, and whatever is the namespace that is mentioned in the config file is what is picked automatically. It's a different matter that you can still give kubectl get pod minus n default. Okay. So you can change, you can manipulate using minus n command. But when you leave it by default, he is going to pick only those that are there, what is mentioned in the config file. And using that particular set context command, I am changing the config file itself. So from now, all my pointers will be pointing, all my commands will be pointing to Kali namespace and not default namespace. Right. Now let me create kubectl apply minus f. No, we have to go then. CD dollar home, CD k CD03 kubectl apply minus f normal dot normal. Okay, I have created. Now let me do the context change again. Right? This time let me run the same command. Do you see it does not change? It did not say unchanged. It created it two times. Why? One it was creating in the default and another one it was creating in the Kali. So now if I give kubectl get pod minus a, you can see QBM manual, one in default namespace, one in Kali namespace. So ideally, when you see two pods cannot have the same name. But when you take along with the namespace, then it becomes a composite key. In which case, you can create multiple pods with the same name. Only thing it has to be in different namespaces. Got that, no? So the usage of namespace is very little with respect to developers, application developers, because normally you're not encouraged to create hundreds of namespaces. It will, the same, resource has to be shared. So sometimes it might happen that you might have a lot of spaces, but you will not use it. And some other application might need more space, but the namespace will not have that much space. So it's always better to have a concise namespaces. But certainly the use case of namespace is very useful with respect to, as I said, different people, right? No, DBAs would want to have their own place and something like this. This is fine, right? So this is what you can have. So whenever you see, you want to have multiple, pod names, just give minus a. And if it's possible, then you switch on to multiple namespaces and see whether you can create the same name. Of course you can, right? No?
Thank you for watching this video. Now, all you need to do is click the link in the description below, or if you're just starting out, type k21academy.com/cka02 into your browser. Once you're on the page, enter your name, your email ID, and your phone number. Then click on register now. Now, here you will be redirected to a thank you page where you can easily add the session to your Google or Apple Calendar. This is your chance to gain valuable insights, so don't miss out. Click the link now and take your learning to the next level. See you in the session.